The G20 Summit opens in Argentina as leaders from the world's largest economies get down to business. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. The 2 days of meetings in Buenos Aires are scheduled to focus on development, infrastructure and food security. But there have already been several discussions and negotiations on the sidelines. And there's anticipation about Saturday's working dinner between Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump on the ongoing trade dispute. We begin our coverage with CGTN's Stephen Gibbs. He's in Buenos Aires. And Stephen, what are some of the highlights from day one?
Well, really, the whole thing has been a highlight. It is quite extraordinary to see the leaders of the great world powers, the great world economies, all in the same place at the same time. I think one highlight, certainly from a Chinese perspective, was the meeting of the BRICS group of nations. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, all gathering together. The message really from that is those are potentially the big economies of the next century. And of course, China are very keen to make the point that the world is changing and that these developing economies are the ones that we should pay attention to. Before then, we also got this image of what they call the family photo, when all the attendees get together. Anyone looking closely might notice very few women there amongst the leaders. That one reason for that actually was partly that the German Chancellor Angela Merkel was late because there was a problem with the presidential plane. We later saw her arrive at something that is just beginning now. That's a gala dinner in the center of Buenos Aires. The Chancellor turned up and she was greeted there by the Argentinian President Mauricio Macri, who is the host of the event. Really, the way this is going, that is along the sidelines of the main summit, we do have all these extremely important meetings between all these very, very powerful people. Right at the beginning, we saw the signing of what is going to replace the NAFTA trade agreement between Mexico, the United States and Canada. That's seen as an achievement that the G20 managed to bring those three countries together, certainly for the signing ceremony. But there's plenty of talking still to go. They're going to be working on a communique. We understand that work on that is still ongoing. It may be somewhat watered down because many of the countries here, they may look like they're all good friends, but of course they have very different perspectives on many different things.
Stephen, the Chinese President Xi Jinping and other leaders in Buenos Aires, including the BRICS leaders, they addressed protectionism at the summit. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, I mean, this is part of the issue of what's going on at this G20 and why it's perhaps rather different than some before it. When the G20, certainly its present form, was formed in 2008, the whole point was that the powerful economies of the world, they needed to work much more closely together to avoid the sort of economic downturn that they just experienced then in 2007 and 2008. Now we see these world powers getting together, but a rather different perspective from two blocks, really. There is one bloc led by President Trump, which is against globalization, one could say, towards protectionism. And then there's another bloc that China is a key part of, saying, look, we've all got to work together on these big issues. Another one that's absolutely sort of been central to some of the discussions here is climate change. And the message is that there's no way that can be solved unless everyone gets together and tries to work together to find a solution. That was a message repeatedly made by the Chinese delegation here. Of course, there is a climate skeptic here in the former President Trump, who's not totally convinced about the human impact on climate change. So we do have different blocks, different views, but they're all pretending they're getting on together. The interesting thing will be that communique and whether it really says anything substantial, or even whether there is a chance that they won't find enough agreement even to sign off the communique.
Thanks, Stephen. That's CGTN's Stephen Gibbs there talking to us from Buenos Aires.